Hi, Pam with Beyond Movement Improvement, and this is my partner in crime, Freddie Boy. Today we are going to go over a full body Katonah yoga session. Katonah yoga is all about alignment within the structure of our bones and our joints within our body. So once we have our joints and our bones, let's say, realigned, then the muscles start to repattern themselves around. So therefore you won't keep as much tension and tightness in some of the spaces that you may feel tight throughout your day. So you can do this whether it be before your workday or after your workday. I've transitioned from doing my practice at night to in the morning. So therefore, I am a lot more clear-headed and I can think a lot better. I have a lot more currency running throughout my body because now I have more space between my vertebrae, between my hips, my neck, everything. So it's been such a game changer and I'm really excited to share this with you guys. So props that you'll need for today include 2 yoga blocks. So if you have cork, I would highly advise getting cork over foam. Cork is just a little bit more firm and it helps restructure your body from the bones and joints, whereas with foam, it's fine if you have foam, but the muscles will tend to melt around. Therefore, it's not really working within the structure as efficiently as the cork. So if you don't have yoga blocks, what you can do is you can use 2 books that are about the same size, if you will. So these are almost the same height as the yoga blocks. And another thing that you'll want is either a blanket or a pillow, or if you have a bolster, great. But that's going to help us sit up to prevent us from sitting back on our tail and rounding our backs. So this is just going to give us that support we need to include that natural wave in our lower back, which is going to promote more of a little arch, if you will. And last but not least, you can take a strap, or if you don't have a strap, you can use a scarf. So right here, boom. And yeah, let's get into it. So first things first, we are going to start with a supported back bend. This is called fish pose. So to set yourself up into a fish pose, we're going to set 1 block right behind the shoulder blades. I'll use my little skeleton for reference. So these 2 bones right here are your shoulder blades. We want to set the first block right at the base to the middle of the shoulder blades. And what this is going to do is this is going to open up our back quite a bit as we tend to sit forward throughout our workday. So this is just going to open you up. So again, we're going to sit and bring this block right below the shoulder blades, or right on the shoulder blades. And you're going to slightly tilt this block towards your heels like this. And then you're just going to bring your back onto the block. And then we have low setting for the block, we have medium setting, and then high setting for the head to be supported. So if your shoulders are quite rounded and you have a really hard time bringing your head down, I would start on the highest setting, which is going to be the easiest setting. Then you have the medium setting, and that's what I'm going to start with. And then I tend to put my block down. So then we want to have hands on both sides of the block here, elbows pointed towards the sky, not splaying outwards, but right under the head, right in between the base and the center of the back of your head. And then just hold this block here for a few moments and take a few deep breaths here. So you're going to inhale through your nose and exhale through the mouth. And just let your back settle into the cork blocks here, or the books or the blocks, the foam blocks. And you're just giving yourself a moment to adjust. You also want to make sure that your feet, your toes are pointing inwards and your knees are slightly rolling in towards one another. And then whenever you're ready, we're going to grab each opposite end of the elbows. So pay attention to which arm is on the bottom, closest to your head. We're just going to reach back. So now everything is opening. You're relaxing the muscles in the back of your body. As you take a deep inhale, you're inhaling all the way up from your pelvis to your throat. And as you're exhaling, you're allowing for the muscles in the back of the body to just relax. Focusing on each vertebrae, creating space, because that's what this is all about. This is not a flexibility practice. This is not stretching. This is all about creating space. And when we have space in the body, we have space in the mind to think more clearly, to go about our day in a much more calm state. And as you're breathing, Continue to just take slower inhales with matching exhales. So try to aim for about 6 to 8 seconds for your inhale. Again, starting all the way from the base of your pelvis, all the way up to your throat. As you're exhaling, just really let the muscles in the back body dissipate with all the tension that's there. And now we're going to switch sides. So if your left arm was under, we're going to switch to the right arm and vice versa. When we're grabbing each opposite elbow, we really want to make sure that the elbow is right in the center of the palm, almost like you're fitting a ball in the mitt. Notice which side is tighter when you put your arm underneath. So again, we're breaking that shell in the back of the body that tends to round forward and that tends to get stuck and stagnant. So we're almost reversing our hunchback here. We're using the tools that we have today to help propel us forward. This is all about longevity, prevention, spaciousness, openness, allowing for more space in the diaphragm as you're inhaling to really, really open and bring your breath through the diaphragm. When we tend to breathe through our chest, that's when we get a little anxious. So we're really focusing on calming our nervous system here. This just sets up your day for a whole different story. And this just sets up your day with a whole different attitude. So now we're going to take this into another arm variation. First things first, I am personally going to bring my block down. If you feel called to it, you may also do the same. And now what we're going to do is we're going to cross one arm underneath the opposite elbow. So I'm going to start with my right elbow facing me, closest to my head. And then I'm going to grab my right wrist with my left hand. And then what we're going to do is we're going to reach the elbows up and back. And now we're going to look to the right if you have your right arm closest to you. And with this variation, this is called eagle arm, you're going to notice really quick which side is harder to turn towards. We almost want to focus on the muscles on the side of our spine called our erectors. We're just lengthening those muscles out. So for me, this is my tighter side. I figured I would start with this side since it's facing you guys. And just really allow that exhale to create all the space in your vertebrae. And again, letting the muscles on the right side of your spine to dissipate. Really try to cross your chin over your right shoulder if you can, if it's available to you. Again, make sure that your knees are staying inwards towards one another. We'll take one more deep breath. And then we're going to switch sides. So bring your head back to center and cross your arms. Now we're going to bring our left arm underneath our right elbow. We're going to grab hold of our left hand here. And we're just going to look over our left shoulder. So this little mini twist, or almost what feels like a twist, is really just pulling on that one side of the spine. So if you tend to get knots in your muscles right around your shoulder blade or right next to your spine, this is really, really good for that. It's almost like unraveling. It feels like we're twisting, but it almost is like we're unraveling and straightening out those muscles along the side. So take a few more deep breaths here. Now to come out of this pose, bring your head back to center. Unwrap your hands, your arms. You can use your hands behind your head to support your neck as you are coming upwards. It's really good to reposition the head. So that way we're nice and in line. When we are sitting upright, our head is pushed back into space. So instead of having a forward head here, we're now more open, and it almost sets the tone of our day, and it allows for us to be more mindful throughout our day of keeping our shoulders back, our head back. So there we have it for the first one. And to kind of break up some of that stiffness, because this posture can be a lot, we're gonna start with some cat-cows. So things to keep in mind to keep our table pose, which is where everything is at 90 degrees. We have perfect fits and folds within our body that allow for us to be symmetrical. So what we're gonna do, I'm showing you from the front, but we're gonna make 2 fist distances away from each knee to allow for that hip distance, and then 2 middle fingers with straight arms, and then pivot from the thumbs to reassure that you have your hands directly under your shoulders. So now I'm going to show you from the side, 2 fist distances away, and then 2 middle fingers away, straight arms, pivot from the thumbs. And for our feet, we want our pinky side of our toes down. And this is just going to put less pressure on the knees. So now we're going to slightly come forward, have a soft bend in your elbows. You're going to pull your elbows in, have your collarbones facing outwards. You're going to look up, inhale, make sure you're getting a good back bend. And as you round your head down, you're looking towards your belly button. You're rounding your upper back, almost creating a hunchback. You're exhaling. So make sure when we're doing these cat-cows, you have your index finger placed into the ground. You have a nice even spacing between all your fingers. We're just bringing some fluidity into the spine here. After that really hard position, we're just kind of breaking things up within the entire spine. Focus on your breathing. I also forgot to mention, but if you have a mirror, not sure if you can see here in this video, but right next to me, I have a little mirror just to make sure that my alignment is set up. If I'm looking at myself from my side, if you're using a camera, that's good too. But making sure that we are starting with the proper foundation in these poses is key, because this is going to set us up for alignment within our body, between our hips and our shoulders. When I work with clients, I tend to notice that a lot of people have either their left or their right hip forward. So we really want to ensure that we're starting this practice strong and symmetrical from the get-go. So again, the muscles can repattern around the bones. Good, we'll do a few more cat-cows here. Again, as you're coming up, you're bringing your chest forward, opening up your collarbones as you're coming back. So coming back and you're tucking your chin, you're tucking everything, you're coming inwards. Perfect. So next what we're going to do is some wrist circles. We're going to focus on one wrist at a time. So a lot of us, when we sit at a 9 to 5, we're typing like this and our wrists are like this, and this can cause carpal tunnel down the road. So what we're actually going to do is go the opposite direction of what we're used to at work. This is what we're going to do in terms of like bringing your fingers all the way pointing back, and then you're going to have this soft bend in your elbows, and then we want to lift off in space here to create wrist circles. Now, we're keeping that same alignment with our fist distance between our knees and our 2 middle fingers, pivoting from the thumbs and just turning one wrist around. So if that's really hard for you and you can't bring the heel of your wrist down, don't force it. We're not ready to go there yet. So what that means is you can elevate only the heel of the wrist that's flipped onto some height here. So you can either double fold a pillow if you're really, really tight. And again, we're just putting the heel of the wrist, and the other hand can go right underneath the pillow. And again, this will allow for you to get the alignment that you need with that support. And again, we're not collapsing into the posture here. We're creating space while still maintaining that soft bend in the elbow, still maintaining the pinky side of the toe. So let's get started there. And you're just swirling around. Most of these poses and movements that we're doing today are just counteracting what we do throughout our workday, because our work positionings are not natural at all. When we're sitting back on our tails, we're rounding our lower back. It's going to pull our hamstrings. It's going to pull our psoas muscle. I'll show you what that is in a minute. And it's rounding our upper back. So we're just mitigating the, I don't want to say doom, but we're mitigating the pain that we could have later due to unnatural positionings at work. And so we're going to go the other direction in the wrist here. And the hands and the wrist are the extensions of the shoulders, which rule the lungs. And when we have our wrist flipped back like this, we're setting up our shoulder blade, the thing I just showed you, the bone on the skeleton I just showed you. We're setting our shoulder blades into the correct positioning and our shoulders in the correct positioning. Think when we have underhand positions, we're really opening up the shoulders. So after this, you can try going from here to here, and we're opening up naturally. So now we're going to shake out our wrists. So we're going to put our thumb and our middle finger right underneath the bone on the wrist. And we're just going to shake it up and down, almost like you're doing a forceful handshake. If that was a lot on your wrist, then we're going to switch sides. So out of all things I do with my clients, I would say this is probably most people's least favorite. And that's just because it's really tight for a lot of people. And a lot of my clients do have shoulder limitations. So this is just, again, setting your shoulders up from the foundation up. And so we're just making our wrist circles in one direction. Notice which wrist is harder to spin. That may be your stronger arm, or the arm that can withstand more. Good, and then we'll go the other direction. Make sure you're getting a little back bend in your lower back with that slight arch. Again, we're not collapsing into it. We're creating space and height. Even though we are putting quite a bit of pressure on the wrist here, especially if you're tight, we're still creating that spaciousness. Always, always, always think space. Not flexibility. Flexibility is all about the muscles, but space is all about the bones. Again, when we can find habits to support our structure, everything else just realigns. Good. We'll shake that wrist out. Very good. So again, if that was a lot, please use as much height as you need, whether you're using a pillow or a blanket, whatever feels best to you. So I was talking about the psoas earlier, and the psoas muscle is an extremely underlooked muscle. It is actually connected to our spine, but you access it through the front. So if we're taking our little skeleton friend again, right about almost at the bottom of the rib cage, there are muscles that attach right here, and they actually connect to your hip flexors and your iliopsoas out here. So when we're stretching or thinking about stretching our hip flexors, we kind of want to go beyond that, which your hip flexors are right here. We want to go beyond that. We really want to get the deep, deep, intricate muscles that are attached to our back, because that can impact one of our hips here hiking upwards, if that makes sense. So one hip can hike upwards if our psoas are shortened. And when we're sitting a lot all day, our psoas, it's almost like our deep, deep core, except they're not core muscles. But think of it as it's beyond your core muscles. Like one side, especially if you cross your legs at work, it can really, really impact your hips, your back, again, your hamstrings, your hip flexors, and it just trickles. So now we're going to do a downwards facing dog, and a downwards facing dog is all about the hips. So when we're doing a downwards dog, again, we're going to measure out our table pose again. So 2 fist distance, 2 middle fingers, keep checking. And now we're going to tuck our toes under, and we're going to push our hips upwards. And we really want to have this nice bend in our knees. Again, make sure that your feet are about hip distance apart. You just want to slightly turn your heels outward so you can't see your heels. And now with our bent knees, we're pushing away with our hands. We're creating an opposing force and are really pushing our butt up towards the sky. So that way we have a nice slight arch in that lower back. We want to be looking right in between the wrist. So we're not looking too far up, we're not looking down, but we're looking right ahead, what's in front of us. We really want to make sure that we have our pointer fingers down, so we're not opening our hands, but our pointer fingers down, and our elbows tucked inwards. And this takes all the pressure and the stress off of the shoulder joints. This is not a shoulder pose at all. This is a hip movement. So this is all in the hips. And when we have stable and symmetrical hips, we have stable and symmetrical shoulders. So we're really pushing the hips up, up, up. We're bending the knees as much as we can. We're just going to take a few deep breaths here. Really push those heels slightly out. It's going to bring your knees directly under your hips. You're pushing away. You're creating two opposing forces between your hands as you're pushing away and your hips pushing upwards. So there's almost like a tug of war action going on between your hands and your hips. Focus on the hips. Try to get that back bend. And then we're going to come into a forward lunge, in which you may need a couple of blocks. So my blocks here. So a forward lunge. So I'm going to start with my right foot forward here. And we're actually going to keep our back leg up. So we're not going to bend. We're going to keep our back leg up. We can even use a block to support. So you're going to slightly tilt it at an angle and you're going to place it right above the knee, not on top of the knee. And now what we're going to do is we're going to place both hands flat. Again, making sure your hands are directly under your shoulders. And then try to, if you can, bring your pinky side of the toe down with that left heel kind of poking outwards a little bit. Now we're just going to look forward. And if it's available to you, we're going to bring the right heel of our hand behind the right foot heel, if it's available. We kind of want the fingers close together here, so not all splayed out. And then your right heel is going to be slightly poking outwards. And if it's available again, we're just going to create some small hip circles. If it is harder to get this heel down just in a normal position, what we can do is place 2 yoga blocks on the low setting. And then we're just going to push off and bring your head back so that way your chin and everything is nice and aligned from your neck to your spine. And we really, really, really want to get our knee where our armpit is. So this is another perfect fit and fold of our body. Is our torso is the exact same length as our leg bone. And then that will allow for us eventually, if we're not there yet, to put our knee inside our armpit. And now you see my shin is the same length as my arm. How cool. So now what we're going to do is we're going to bring each hand to opposite sides. You can kind of push through your fingertips here. We're going to push our toes now towards the right hand. And now you're going to bring both hands to the opposite side. Push your left heel of your hand down. Have a soft bend in your left elbow. What you're going to do is you're going to pull your elbow in towards your rib cage, just like those wrist circles. And now we're going to push our right knee open, and we're going to look over our right shoulder here. Take some nice deep breaths. This may feel like a lot. And if it does, just embrace it. When we tend to stay in a pose longer than what we would like, that is literally where you will start to feel your muscles shifting. So it may feel like torture. It may feel pretty difficult initially. It may arise some emotions that you didn't even know were there from some of the restrictedness that you're feeling. But just keep consistent, keep with it, and I promise you, you will see results. Promise. So continue to look over that right shoulder. Really push that knee open. Make sure that your left elbow and even your right elbow are softly bent. So you're not locking your arms out. We're finding ease and grace in these postures, even if it doesn't feel like ease and grace right now. You're creating effort now to make things effortless over the time. Perfect. So now we're gonna bring our foot forward, our right foot, bring our hands back, and we're gonna come back into a downward dog. And it's nice to feel a little bit easier now after that opening of our hip. So try to make sure that your feet are nice and hip distance. Put your butt towards the sky, really bend the knees if you have to, raise those heels. Again, not the traditional downward dog that you may have done in the past. Make sure your fingers are straight. You're pointing through your finger, your pointer finger. You're pulling your shoulders in by pulling your elbows in. Really make sure everything is nice and in line from your toes to your hands. Make sure one hip's not sinking down, but you're really, really pushing your hips up towards the sky. And then we're going to come forward with the other side. So now I'm going to put my block under my right leg here. Now I have a nice 90 degree in my front left leg. Lay my hands on each side. For me, this one's harder to bring my left hand down next to my left foot. Kind of interesting. And as we're breathing here, we're thinking of our two opposing forces. Our left knee is shooting forward. Our right heel is shooting backwards. And again, this is how our space is created. If it's available to you, you can bring your right hand and your right heel. Yeah, this hand almost doesn't want to come all the way down, but it is. And then we're going to bring our hands on each side of the mat here. Nice and even. We're going to point our left toe out. I'm even bringing my heel out slightly with my whole foot. And then we're going to bring all of our hands, all two of them, flatten your right hand, pull your elbow in, soft bend in that right elbow. And then you're going to open your left hip up here. And then pull your left elbow down. We're going to look over our left shoulder. For me, this is my easier side to turn. And as we're doing this, just feel what needs to be felt. I think over time, this will feel effortless. But right now, we are creating the effort. So this is kind of getting an interesting spot right around the hips, especially that left hip. You may feel it in your inner thigh. For me, I kind of feel it like up in the sides of my hips, almost like where the iliopsoas, TFL. Really bring your head up and over. We'll just take a few more deep breaths here. Good. We're focusing on all of our bones, opening up. And now we're going to bring our foot forward, our hands back down, come back into a downwards dog. Raise your heels, make sure your hands and your feet are nice and even. Bend your knees, look forward. You can shift your hands side to side, almost like you're rocking your hips. I'll show you. For me, this creates spaciousness in my mid-back. I have a metal rod in my mid-back. Actually, I have a metal rod in my whole entire spine. Oh, keep your hands on the ground. I have a metal rod in my whole spine, so I do tend to get a little stiff. You can even pedal with your feet, so one foot up at a time. One foot can come down. Very good. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to bring our feet forward and measure your 2 feet, two fist distances away. And we're actually going to come into a forward fold. We're basically already here. So this one, slight turnout in your heels. So when I say that, so here your heels are forward, and then a slight turnout is going to look like this. And from here, we're just going to hang, again, we're going to grab each opposite side of the elbows like a ball in the mitt. Really try to get in the middle of both sides and even switch it up. Do the side that's harder for the arm in front. And then what we're going to do here is we're just going to bend the knees, bend them as much as possible. Just bring your head down. Again, here we're trying to get our knees in the armpits. So just like your elbows fit in the hands, our knees fit in the armpits. And if you can, look down at your ankles and see if you have any wrinkles. So if you come too far forward, you're going to have a lot of wrinkles. If you come back, maybe not as much. So really make sure that we're kind of ironing out all of these spots in the ankles. So continue to look down. You can sway from front to back. And as you're doing this, look at the arches in your feet. Which arch is more raised? Which one is more collapsed? So the left side of our body represents the maternal. It's the side that stays in, the side that tends to the home, the creative nature, the intuitiveness. The right side is the paternal, the side that goes out into the world, signs the checks, makes the deals, very structured. And whichever side of your arch is collapsed, more so, is probably where we're overdoing it, more than likely. And our foot is a direct reflection of our entire body. So the heel is going to represent the sacrum, which is right at the bottom of the spine. And right under, so where your big toes are, right under the meaty part of your toes, that little crook, that represents your neck. How crazy. So if you look on the bottom of your feet and one side is more worn, that's just where we tend to overdo it. Good. So now what we're going to do is we're going to bring our arms in line with our ears. And we're just, keep your hips where they are. We're just opening up like a book. So now we can see what's right in front of us. Really try to bring your arms back. And then we're going to stand up. And now I'm kind of losing my frame here, but try to shift from side to side with your feet as even as you can. Another way to measure, if you don't have two fist distances available, turn one of your feet in towards your heel and then back out. And that reassures that you're nice in hip distance. Again, focus on which hip, if any of them are coming forward, your right or your left side's coming forward more, just kind of pull it back. Really try to be mindful here of your symmetry. Good. Now shake it off. Roll your shoulders back a few times. You can still stand. Very good. Took a quick little intermission there. Well, here's Freddie. He says hello. So we have one more thing left, and we're going to do a seated twist. And this is really good to sit up on height. So I'll show you why. So we really want to make sure that we are sitting right in between our pubis and our coccyx. So I'm going to come a little bit closer here so you can see, hopefully. So pubis being right here in the front of the hips, and coccyx is that tailbone, so right at the bottom of your tail. So that way our head is centered right here, because what happens, so again, in the center, our head's right in that center there. And again, what happens when we're sitting at work is we get really sloppy because we're sitting like this on our tail. So we're creating that natural wave again with that arch in our lower back. So we do want to sit on some height. And when we come into a twist, we want to ensure, again, we are creating a lot of space, and I'll tell you how to do so. So first, we're sitting up on our height, and we're going to pull one foot in right next to our hip. And you can bend this other leg softly. And what we're going to do is we're going to hug our knee. Hug, hug, hug. So really fitting that knee inside your elbow. And we're going to bring our hand directly below, directly behind us. So our heel of the hand is down. Our middle finger is pointed back. And what we're doing is we're bringing our sternum and our chest up and forward. With each twist, we're really opening our chest up. So what we're going to do is we're going to inhale, so you may come out the pose, but as you exhale, we're really, really, really bringing our chest up and forward. And then our head is back in space, our head being here, not here, but here. So really hug that knee and exhale. And so now our heart is at 90 degrees and our eyes are coming to 180 degrees. So if our heart is in the right place, then so is our vision. So we're going to notice here which side is harder to twist. For me, again, having a metal rod in my back, twists are my arch nemesis, but they work so well to bring that alignment in your entire spine. So notice after a few exhales, you're able to turn a little bit more. And if it's available to you, it's personally not for me because again, the metal rod, push your arm right in front of your knee, but make sure that one shoulder is not hiked up higher than the other. So that's why I choose to hug. So continue to twist. If our heart's in the right place, so is our vision. Our eyes are 180 degrees, all the way behind us. Really try to bring your left eye behind that right shoulder in terms of where you're looking. Good, and then we'll come back straight. Now soft bend in that right knee, pulling your heel in, your left heel. Good pubis here. So now I have that nice arch in my lower back. I'm hugging that left knee with my right elbow. Middle fingers pointed directly behind me. My chest is coming up and forward. Really focus on the lengths of your inhales and your exhales. Trying to really push your sternum and your chest forward and up. So that way we're not twisting from the lower back. We're twisting with our entire spine. Try to pull that left elbow in towards the rib cage. Very good. Now, if you have the time and space to do so today, we can do one more last pose, a bonus pose. So maintaining your butt on this bolster, pillow, whatever is adding height to your bum, essentially. We're going to come into a forward fold. And for this one, you may need a little bit more height just to get your butt back so you can push your hips back, butt cheek by butt cheek. And use as much height in your blocks. Bend your knees as much as you need so that way you can create that knee fitting in the armpit. And another thing that's really helpful to help keep your hips in alignment so that way your knees aren't falling outwards, it's a very common habit for people, is for the knees to fall outwards, is you can use a strap or a scarf to anchor yourself in that much more and feel the difference of how this really pulls the structure of your body and aids in that alignment. It's insane because again, a lot of us, our knees want to splay outwards. So I'm just going to strap right above my knees here. Like this. Now my knees are pulled in. This creates such a different sensation in the hips. So now we're closing into ourselves for the final pose here. And this one you want to really maybe set a timer. For every minute, count how many breaths that you're taking. The slower our breath over time, the slower our heart rate, the longer we live. So if we think about animals that live in the wild, or even pets, like if you have a pet, notice how quickly it's breathing. And unfortunately, those creatures tend to live a little bit less due to a rapid fight or flight nervous system state. They're constantly having to think about, because I mean, animals in the wild thinking about prey and just survival of the fittest, if you will. Those animals will tend to live a shorter life. And when we can manipulate our breath, we can manipulate just about anything. just because we're more focused, we're more centered. And so now we're gonna fall forward and we're really focusing on that fit of our knees and our armpits. You can pull the toes up towards you. We're gonna rest your head down. We're just gonna take a few moments here to really focus on how many breaths can you take. I've gotten mine down to 2 breaths a minute just by focusing on box breathing, if you will, for 8 seconds in, a few seconds hold, 8 seconds out, or a few seconds hold, and then repeat. Sometimes it's 10, 15 seconds. Just breathe into the tight spaces. Allow them to relax the muscles around the spine. Even if your hips are tight, breathe into the hips, wherever's tight. You'll notice you can get a lot deeper into this pose. But when we're panicking, when we're feeling anxious because something feels really constricted and tight, then it's almost like compensation leads to further compensation. Then we start to feel pain in the muscles in the body because we're not allowing ourselves to give that space where it needs to go. Yeah, with the strap, this adds a whole different experience as it's binding you in. We're not overdoing it. We're not trying to push through. We're not trying to create flexibility here in the muscles. We're trying to create space. I have to reinforce that concept. So really feel which side is tighter. Breathe space and think that your hips are leveling out here when we're doing this. Again, if one shoulder, one hip is more forward or more hiked up, send love to the shorter shoulder. Lengthen those muscles out. Send love to the hip that is sitting back, because that's the side that's overused. It's shortened, and the muscles have a little bit more adhesions than the other side. So the side that's almost caved inwards, we're creating space on that side. All right. Excellent job. If you stuck all the way through, congrats, you made it, you are done. I hope you enjoyed today's session, and definitely, if this is on YouTube, click to subscribe for further videos because we're going to be cranking them out here. So I appreciate everyone's attendance and stay tuned for further yoga practices of the Katonah fashion. So thank you for joining and see you shortly. Cheers.